Which Pokemon would I eat is probably the fastest way to take this video from 0 to 100, but it is what we're talking about today. It's pretty clear in the world of Pokemon that these are the animals. Therefore, these are also the meat sources. So I took it upon myself to put all 1,000 plus of these critters into categories based on how edible I think that they would be, ranging from literally inedible to I would kill that Pokemon with my bare hands if it meant I could taste it. Why? Because I thought it would be funny in a morbid kind of way. I didn't go through the Pokedex entries or do any research beyond quick Google searches, so this is based entirely on my memory of the games and the anime, as well as just the vibes that these Pokemon bring. Also, to paint a picture for my mental state when I'm making this list, my wife is currently pregnant and she can't stand the smell of food while it's cooking, so she recommended that we try Factor, which is basically frozen dinners, if they weren't frozen, were twice as good and 4 times the cost. So we bought a bunch of boxes of Factor only to find out that the baby in her belly did not like it. So after 2 weeks of me eating nothing but microwave meals while my wife goes to like In-N-Out, Del Taco, and Panera, one sleepless night the demons came out and I whipped out my phone, opened up tiermaker.com and just started sorting them. One specific caveat to this that I want to bring up is that I'm ranking this on if I would eat or drink any part of that Pokemon. This isn't a bones and all situation. So like I probably wouldn't be all that willing to eat a Chansey itself, but if a Chansey were to come up to me and offer me its egg, I would be interested in seeing what kind of luck-bearing properties I could get from turning that thing into an omelet or something. Also, I'm not taking into account how tough it would be to get to the point where I could eat these Pokemon. Like sure, a Charizard would probably turn me into a Nick kebab before I could turn it into a lizard steak, but we're not concerned with that. This is assuming that I have the opportunity to turn these Pokemon into food and consume it. Would I do it? The first tier, as I mentioned, are those that I believe to be literally inedible. Here they all are. These are the ones that I think would be impossible to consume even if you wanted to for whatever reason. We have a lot of steel, rock, and ghost type Pokemon, as well as Pokemon that are more representative of inanimate objects, like the Rotom appliances, the Porygon line, and the Voltorb lines. I don't think this portion of the list really should cause any controversy amongst the people, but if you have any controversy, let me know. Not much else to say here, so let's move on. The next tier up the line I labeled as probably fatal. I'm sure there is a way to eat these Pokemon, but I feel like in doing so, it would result in my untimely death in one way or another. Here I included most of the poison type Pokemon. I feel like death is not going to suddenly remove the poison from their bodies, so I would probably die eating them. I also included several fire and ice type Pokemon that I believed would still maintain their severe heat or cold even in death, and several electric type Pokemon for the same reason. Ditto, I was afraid that it could transform into like a Snorlax while in my stomach and just explode me from the inside like what happened in The Boys Season 3 Episode 1. I also wouldn't trust a Pineco to not, Absol, the Murkrow line, and the Zoroark lines are here because I think eating them would invite bad juju into my life and cause a meteorite to fall on my head as I walk out of a building or something. Also, several Pokemon are here just because their anatomy would probably tear up my insides as they were going through the process of digestion. Darkrai, Munna, and Musharna just give off weird vibes when I think of eating them. I don't trust those vibes. The Solosis, Duosion, and Reuniclus line are all here because I do not expect things to end particularly well by consuming a 2-pound single-celled organism that is actively going through mitosis. The Genie legendary Pokemon from the Unova region are all literal forces of nature. I don't want to eat a thunderstorm, so why would I eat the literal personification of one? The Spritzee line I think would be the equivalent to chugging a bottle of perfume. Gumi should be obvious. Yveltal is the personification of death. That would be like saying, what are you gonna do, stab me, to a homicidal maniac? If Cosmog were to evolve in my stomach, then I would be stuck with a 10,000 pound singularity in my bowels, which I don't think has been proven by science, but it sounds fatal to me. Meltan is literally mercury, and finally the Sinistea line and their Gen 9 counterparts. I don't trust any ghost type Pokemon that offers to let me drink part of it. I'm sorry, I just don't. Here's the full list of every Pokemon that I put in this category. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I may or may not answer them in the comments. I often get a little overwhelmed and ignore comments for a few days at a time. Now we have the next tier, which is the I would rather starve than eat this category. This is the most arbitrary one on the list and probably the most controversial in the comment section, and that's okay. I have several different reasons for why I classified them this way. We have Pokemon like Abra, Machop, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Mr. Mime, Jinx, Gardevoir, Hariyama, Medicham, Conkeldurr, Sock, Throh, Scrafty, and Meloetta, along with whatever evolutionary lines that they may have. The reason why I included them is because I feel like they're just a little too humanoid, you know? Like, I feel like it's one of those things that there would always be the stigma floating around me if word got out. People would see me and be like, hey, that's the dude that ate the Kirlia. He's practically a cannibal if you think about it. And I really don't want to catch that kind of smoke. The next category is a lot of baby Pokemon. Kind of the same reason, I just feel like it would make me a pariah if word got out that I didn't even let a Pokemon get a few months old before shoving it down my gullet. Third subcategory of Pokemon that I would rather die than eat are ones that I just kind of have a personal connection to, or ones that are loved by people I know, or just the community in general. My 2-year-old would never look at me the same if he found out that I had eaten a Pikachu or a Squirtle. Same with Pokemon like Vulpix, Eevee, and Phanpy. They're just too cute and fun looking to want to harm in any kind of way. Kangaskhan to me seems like I'd just be attacking a single mother and bringing yet another Cubone into this world. Also, Maushold, I feel like I would take one look at them and would rather just jump off a building than eat them. They got their kids with them. And then we have Esper, who just looks like me whenever I remember something cringy I said 15 years ago. I can't do that to a creature that is obviously going through a crisis right now. I also added Paris and Parasect to this category. I don't know if this is like confirmed in the lore or if it's just a theory, but I'm one of those people that believes that these Pokemon are being completely controlled by the mushrooms on their back. I'm not gonna test it out by eating possible zombie fungus crabs. And finally, the last of the Pokemon that I would rather starve than eat are those that I think my eating them could possibly cause the end of the world, if not the universe. Mew is the source of all Pokemon DNA, Celebi is the god of the forest. Also, I don't know what role the legendary dogs from the Johto region hold in the world balance, but I don't want to find that out by eating them. Same with Ho-Oh, Lugia, Latios, and Latias. The entire plot to Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald revolves around how important the legendary trio is to maintaining the balance of the world's climate and ecosystems, and I recognize my life is not worth sacrificing that balance just to eat them. The Sinnoh trio are the personifications of knowledge, emotion, and willpower, so I think if they hadn't already been eaten, doing so would only make things worse for society. Palkia and Dialga are time and space personified. I don't want to cause any dimensional cataclysms that way. You get the point. Legendaries are often Pokemon that are canonically established as beings that have ties to the fate of the universe, so I'm not going to eat them. These next Pokemon are ones that I am very, very much disinterested in consuming, but I'm not going to let myself starve if that is literally the only alternative. A lot of bug Pokemon are in here. And while that may be the future of what we're forced to do for the protein if the situation here on planet Earth gets a lot worse, this is the present, and I'm currently going to avoid eating bugs when given the option to do so. We also have ones that are like based on animals that I wouldn't consider the most edible in the world, but I also wouldn't consider them inedible, like common birds, monkeys, dogs, cats, elephants. Would there be a stigma for eating a Poochyena? Probably, but not nearly as much as like a baby Pokemon or a Pikachu, you know? I have also included some legendaries in here, like the legendary birds from the Kanto region, because it seems like there are canonically multiples of these. Just like some dude had a Zapdos in the anime, so they can't be all that dire for the world balance if I were to just eat one of them, right? I also included Fidough here because I don't really consider raw dough as my first choice when it comes to deciding what I eat, but I wouldn't really turn it down in a life or death situation. Now we have the ones that I'm not really interested in, but I would try them if I was hungry. So a little bit more appealing than the tier below it, but still not food that I'm going to seek out. There are a lot of grass Pokemon here, and I want to explain that. I know this will be considered controversial to some, but remember, like at the beginning of this video, I said that I'm ranking this on if I would eat or drink any part of the Pokemon. So while I wouldn't want to eat a Shaymin, I wouldn't be opposed if I was served up like a salad with Combusken meat and a Shaymin cilantro on top. And like for Tangela and Tangrowth, I feel like those vines could be turned into a type of pseudo pasta, like the zucchini noodles that you sometimes see as like a low calorie alternative. Here we also have Pokemon whose real life animal counterparts are eaten in parts of the world, but either I haven't tried it or I don't like them that much, so here they are. A lot of these would taste pretty gamey, I would say. And like I've eaten rabbit, duck, and frog legs. They're just not really my jam, you know? There are also a few bug Pokemon on this list that I might try if I were feeling exceptionally daring one day. And then we have like Flapple. Literally everything else in the Applin evolutionary line looks yummy, except for this little guy who just hollowed out an apple and uses its skin to fly around. Now we're getting to the good stuff, the Pokemon that I actually want to eat. And for this, I feel like I owe it to you guys to give my rationale for every single one. So we're going to spend more time on these next two tiers than anything before it. This tier is labeled as interested in trying. First, we have Psyduck and Golduck because they're ducks. Ducks are edible. Let's give it a shot. Slowbro and Slowking are also in this tier because of their proximity to Slowpoke in the evolutionary line. And there is a distinct plot point made in Pokemon Gold and Silver about how frickin' good Slowpoke tails taste, to the extent that they're bought and sold on the black market. So Slowbro and Slowking have got to be pretty good too. Shellder is here just because mollusks are edible. I'd give it a shot if I were like on a cruise line and it was a fancy Shellder night and I could be like, okay, I'm going to order that and the Bouffalante burger. So if the Shelder's not very good, at least I have the burger as a backup. Both forms of Exeggutor are in this tier because I kind of want to crack open one of those heads and see how similar it is to a coconut. I'm sure the face will grow back. The next two on this list are probably going to be very surprising, but I put Drowsy and Hypno on here. It's for a good reason though, it's for the children. Since these two canonically will take kids out into the woods and hypnotize them, I would find one in an area where this phenomenon is known to occur, and then I would, you know, I'll tell you one thing, I don't think Drowsy and Hypno will be taking kids into the woods once they know that there is some psychopath who's sick of factor meals and is going to retaliate against them for doing so. Chansey and Blissey, I already gave as an example. Like, I feel like their eggs have luck-bearing properties. I think that's part of the lore, and they give it to like trusted Pokemon and humans as an act of goodwill. So I feel like it would be rude to not eat it if one of them offered an egg to me. Also, okay, hear me out. I feel like in my bones that Lickitung and Licky-Tongues would be like a delicacy in the Pokemon world. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think this is backed up by any lore, but I just feel like they are delicacies. Like, I would give it a shot. Tauros should be obvious. That is a burger waiting to happen. Magikarp is canonical food for both humans and Pokemon, so why not? Let's just throw Gyarados into the mix while we're at it, since it looks like an oversized prawn. Vaporeon is on this list because I think it looks like it tastes good. It's going to piss off a subset of down bad Pokemon fans, but I'm speaking my truth. Moltres should be an obvious choice. That is a chicken. The Totodile line is on here merely for curiosity's sake. Mareep is because I've had lamb before and it was pretty decent, so why not? Sunkern is here because it's literally a sunflower seed. I'd eat them by the bag. I could be wrong, but I believe that Shuckle are canonically sucked out of their shells as food. I feel like I've heard that at one point. If I'm wrong, then whoops, but I will find that out through trial and error, not by research. Octillery, once again, is on here for curiosity's sake. I've never had octopus, but I'm open to it. Delibird looks like an edible bird. The Torchic line, just like Moltres, those are pre-cooked chickens. I think if you roasted a Seedot and a Nuzleaf, they would taste pretty dang good. And while we're talking about nuts, let's just skip to Gen 6 for a moment. I use the same reasoning for the Chespin line. Grumpig and the Lechonk line are both on here because they are pigs. I lived in Mexico for a time, and there's a dish there that's called nopales, which is just cooked cactus. Do you see what I'm getting at? Yep, these ones, I'd eat them. I'd make nopales out of them. I know it's pretty common for people to just lose their damn minds over eating crab and lobster, and while I personally am not the biggest fan of them, I see the vision. So Corphish, Crawdaunt, Clawitzer, Clawitzer, and Klawf are on here, and I'm pretty sure Klawf is canonically eaten according to Pokedex entries, and it's like a delicacy. I refuse to fact check that, but I think it's canonical. Here I have also specifically put just the rain version of Castform because it's just water. I give it a little slurp. I like water. Cherubi or Cherubi, I don't know how it's pronounced. It looks like it tastes pretty sweet. Emboar is literally bacon. I put Basculin on here for some reason, but I'm not going to retcon what I did a month ago while on Factor Brain. Ducklet and Sirfetch'd, same reasoning as Psyduck. Bounsweet looks absolutely delicious. I'm not going to lie, I'd pop that thing right in my mouth, no questions asked. Same with Applin, the little dragon worm thing included. Milcery is in this tier because it is straight sugar. It probably does not taste as good as Alcremie and is probably a bit of a sweetness overload, but I'm still pretty interested in it. Also, we have the Knackley line because their names are literally derived from the chemical compound for salt. I'm sure you could whack these Pokemon with a pickaxe and then you have the most bomb-ass salt for your roasted Farfetch that you could ever hope for. Tatsugiri is literally sushi. Also, I'm noticing a concerning amount of edible Pokemon in Gen 9. And this thing, which I didn't know existed until I made this tier list, looks absolutely terrifying, but it is part of the Applin line and therefore looks delicious, so I'm not going to let that stop me. Oh, and one final Pokemon that is on this tier that I held off until the end to talk about for shock value, Togepi. That thing is a hard-boiled egg. I'm sorry, I'm turning Togepi into a deviled egg and I am eating it. The final tier in my tier list is called On-Site. These are the Pokemon that I would go out of my way to seek out and eat. They look delectable. Starting out with my boy Slowpoke. As I mentioned before, 10-year-old me stopped Team Rocket from chopping off their tails, but now as a grown man, I wonder if they had a point. They risked jail for it. And I even consider that maybe the Johto government has a bit of corruption going on. You can't tell me that their prime minister isn't eating something that good if people are risking their entire lives to chop off the tails and sell them on the black market. It's like when former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie shut down all of the beaches during a government shutdown, and then he still went to the beach with his whole family. You know, that's probably the situation with Slowpoke tails in the Pokemon world. Next up, we've got Farfetch'd, both versions of them. It's canon that they're a delicacy. I gotta try it at least once. I'm not even that big of a fan of roast duck, I just want to give it a shot based on the hype surrounding it alone. For Krabby and Kingler, the same line of thought as to those ducks. Like, I'm not the biggest crab fan, but based on the hype around it, let's go for it. Execute is a Pokemon that is waiting for me to bash them on the side of a bowl one by one, spill their insides into it, spend 2 minutes trying to fish out a tiny piece of shell that accidentally got in, and then making scrambled eggs. That is a classic breakfast. I'm gonna try it. Miltank is a cow. I eat those. I also really want to try the Moo Moo milk. Tropius is on here not because I fantasize about eating one of these flying brachiosaurs, but because I like bananas. There are bananas on its neck. I will take one, I will eat it, and then I will let the big guy fly away for free. Combee is on here just because honey. I don't know if that's cheating. That's why I put it here and I'm not changing my mind on that. Pignite is here because once again, it's pre-cooked pork. I'm having Pignite with some macaroni salad, some pineapple and rice, and I'm calling it a good frickin' meal. And you know what I'm having for dessert? A Vanillite. That's right. I mentioned earlier that I would order a Bouffalant burger as my alternate meal in case I didn't like Shelter on the hypothetical cruise ship that I was going on. So it should come as no surprise, Bouffalant is on the on-site tier. Now we have Swirlix and Slurpuff. These things are just pure sugar. Their screams will die out as they go down my throat. I mentioned Milcery in the tier below this, so we have Alcremie in this tier. This includes the Gigantamax version of it, though I'm sure one bite of that thing would immediately give me type 2 diabetes. Now we've got Doc Bun on this list. What can I say? I love me some good, fresh baked bread. The smell alone around this dog would drive me nuts. Now we have Capsicid and Scovillain. These come from a place of ego and wanting to prove myself. I believe the Pokedex entry for Scovillain says something like how it's 11 trillion on the Scoville level, but I bet that the Pokedex entry was written by a wimp. I'd give it a shot as long as I have a good tall glass of milk next to me. Or a Vanillex. And finally, the last two on this tier list are Appletun and Dipplin. I had no idea Dipplin existed until I made this tier list. But Appletun is literally pie, and I'm pretty sure it said in the Dex entry that Appletun lets kids peel off a bit of the crust as a little treat. I myself would become friends with an Appletun, so it would offer me that, and I would take a lot more than just a bit of the crust, so I'm just going to say that right now. And Dipplin is just a caramel apple. It looks good. So there we have it. These are all of the Pokemon ranked by how likely I would be to eat them. I would like to apologize to Factor and the Pokemon Company if either of you are checking in to see if I'm a worthy sponsor candidate. I promise that I will shill for you until my dying breath should you give me the chance. But as for now, neither of you sponsor me, so this video stays up. But anyway, I hope this video was good background noise, or at least a fun video to skim through the chapters to see what my answers were, so you can comment down below what you feel like I got wrong. My name is Not Freaking Nick, and I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will catch you later.